And I guess we're on. So hi, Angie and Sadessa. It's really good to see you. And I'm really glad that you've given me this opportunity today to ask you some questions and hear some about your own experience. So let me introduce you first to people who might not know you. This is Angie and Sadessa Yelling. They are married. How long have you been married now?
7 years.
7 years.
You can't agree on that. That's good. 7 years. And you have one adult daughter, and you have 2 sons who are toddler preschool age, right?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. 2 and 4. Okay. They're cute as cute can be. You're both nurses, and you, in this time of the pandemic, you've had some experience now working with COVID positive patients. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit of what that's been like.
Well, we had to adjust in the workplace very quickly because this came rapidly. No one kind of knew how to handle it when it first came. So we're experiencing COVID negative patients with COVID positive patients, dealing with how to separate the two. A lot of the CNAs are scared. A lot of the nurses are scared, but with management, we're learning how to deal with it better.
I think a lot also was, in addition to learning how to deal with it, there was a shortage in equipment. So we had an idea of how to deal with it, but we didn't have the equipment. So we also had to improvise with a lot of things, like reusing masks. We weren't taught ever to reuse masks, and we quickly had to forget about that. And in this moment right now, that was okay, you know? So
unlearn the things that you had learned.
Yeah, right. And
now it's been going on for a while, right? Mm-hmm. Do you find that you're more comfortable in the environment because of that?
Yes, we're managing it better.
Okay.
We're managing it better, yes. They've kind of separated who's negative and positive by the floor, so we're managing better, and the staff feels more comfortable with taking care of the patients that are COVID positive, sorry. Yes.
Like anything, experience really helps us feel more comfortable and confident.
We didn't hear you, Pastor Jane.
I'm sorry. With anything, experience makes us feel more comfortable and confident about something.
Definitely.
And that's certainly true in the environment you're in.
Yeah.
So you are 2 women of color raising 2 boys of color who are very young right now. But I can imagine that you have a perspective that you bring, especially raising sons, mm-hmm. that is important to hear. And I would love to know, with all that's been going on in the last couple of weeks, how you have been processing that and feeling about that.
In the very beginning, I mean, it still is very sad, but the very beginning, it was hard to watch. It was hard to even believe that we were still going through this at this time. We cried together many times watching the news and just seeing what was unfolding, you know, and thinking about our children, that they one day will be in those circumstances and we may not be there, you know.
We felt scared and we felt helpless, kind of. We're dealing with one pandemic with the COVID, and then this happened. So it was just like too much. That's how we felt. It was just too much.
Overwhelming.
Yeah. And then as we saw, you know, the protests starting and wanting to be there, and also understanding the pandemic that we're going through, it felt like we were being pulled in two directions. Like our heart wanted to do something and our knowledge was pulling us back. You know, like we shouldn't, this may not be safe to do. And we listened to one of your sermons, and and we really felt moved to do something, to just have faith that if we have been able to work with people and continue through the pandemic and COVID, that we should be able to also let our voices be heard, taking the proper precautions, of course, because you know, we definitely didn't want to bring our children there because we weren't sure of what was going to happen, but we wanted to be heard for them. So I think we just took the first step, you know.
And trying to help.
And trying to help, yeah.
To try to make a difference.
So yesterday, I happened to call you. I was checking in with you and had a couple kind of business questions to ask you too. And you had just gotten home from a protest in Hartford. And I was really struck by the vibrancy in your voices as you talked about it. So I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about the experience of taking that step of going to the protest.
Well, this was both of our first protests to go to. We felt comfortable with going with one of my cousins organized the protest. So we felt safe to go. I felt empowered. I felt unity. I felt love. I felt togetherness. It really was something.
You know, we prepared beforehand, you know, just in case, you know. We prepared instructions for Cassandra, you know, and we let our family know where we were going. And we also, you know, wore a mask and brought extras in case anyone needed. But once we got there, everything was so well organized. It felt even better to be there and see that everyone was under the same thought that we were going to be protesting and also taking precautions. There was people, you know, handing out bags of water with a mask in it, an apple and a snack. Even hand sanitizers were being handed out. And there was no violence at all. Police were present. It didn't feel like there was tension. There was no tension. Did you feel tension?
No.
There was no tension. And overall, you know, walking through the streets of Hartford and chanting, "I can't breathe," at the same time that we're going through a pandemic, it was like, it was that one, I can't breathe for both, you know? It's COVID is not letting us breathe, and neither is racism. So it was moving, you know. I really felt empowered, and I want to continue to do it.
I definitely would like to go to another one. I really do.
Like, I really feel like if we don't continue to fight for what was started 100 years ago, it was for nothing, you know, at this point. So we have to continue, you know. And I don't know what the end is going to look like or what we're going to accomplish, but we have to start somewhere.
That sense of empowerment that you felt, I think, is what came through in your voices yesterday. Mm-hmm. And that was really, it just moved me to hear that. And it's what made me say, I want the congregation to hear about this. And so I'm so grateful to have you share that. And I think, I guess I also want to acknowledge that not everyone can or should make the choice to go, right, to the protests. That there are people for whom their own vulnerability with their own health or members of their household is too great, really, to make that decision. And I've talked to a number of people like that who are very much in and for the cause, and are torn up because they can't go, and yet they know they can't go. And I guess I wanted to like sort of publicly acknowledge that, and yet also celebrate that for you, even though you had hesitated and decided not to go before that, that you took that step, and it felt so right, and so much so that you want to keep doing it and lifting your voices, and that it is really on behalf of your children,
Yeah.
most of all, that you are doing this.
Definitely. It was a hard choice because you feel like, what if I'm making the wrong choice? You know, there's so many ifs. You know, we have children in the house right now. My dad is in the house. He's 80 years old. And, you know, everyone could be affected by one choice that we make. But we also felt that we felt like a calling, almost like we have to be there. Like, you know, we're going to protect ourselves, but we also feel protected by God. And whatever happens is supposed to happen. That's how I feel. Like, I feel like if something ever happened, I'm supposed to go through this and teach other people by going through it myself. Because we don't learn unless somebody actually goes through an experience, being COVID, being whatever it is, somebody has to tell the story. So this is our story.
It is, and it's powerful. And I guess one last thing that I would ask is, what message would you want your church family to hear in the midst of all that's going on? Not just your story, but all of this. What do you think you would want the people who are your wider family, a multiracial family, what would you want us to hear in all this?
My biggest thing is, if you have kids or grandkids, start the conversation at home. Start the conversation at home. So I think that's important.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the same thing. I think, you know, prayer is a lot, but more is having the conversation and listening to people of, you know, how they feel. And sometimes I think people don't even realize with words or actions how they may affect someone else. If you have a conversation and just, even the person who's being affected, if I tell you that offended me and this is why, then we learn together. And I think that children have to be taught that certain things are wrong. You know.
I so appreciate your saying that, because I think, you know, speaking as a white person, it is easy for me to tiptoe around the topic of racism and worry that I'm going to say something offensive, right? And it is freeing to think that someone could lovingly call me out on something that I've said, right? And so, and then I can learn, and I don't have to worry that they're going to be quietly, you know, offended and hold a grudge, right? But say, correct me, or let me know how that felt or how that sounded. And I think that that's freeing for all of us, right? To be a little more open together.
But that is a hard thing to do, you know. I think that it's hard to tell someone, if I feel offended, that you've offended me in that moment, you know. So it takes a lot, but I think it's necessary, because otherwise we won't know, and there is no growth, because we just move on, and then you just carry that to the next person, and you just don't let it go, you know. So.
And I think it's never too late to say that offended me.
Right.
Right.
I felt this way when you said that. I too am someone who I'm not going to respond in the moment, probably. I have to think about it and process it.
Mm.
And I love it when someone comes to me, days later and says either what you said didn't sit right with me, or says, I really worried that what I said might have upset you or offended you. It's not too late to have the conversation ever.
Right. Well, I think there's a responsibility on both ends, on the person who's being offended or the offendee, because you can't you can't just, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I can't know what you're thinking, and I don't know the perception that you're listening to me with, So I think we all have to take responsibility for teaching and listening. So we have a lot of work to do. We do, and I think a lot of the things that are said are just things that we hear, and we think is right to say. I'm mostly talking about children. They might hear someone say something, and then they think it's okay because their parents said it, or their grandparents said it, or their teacher said it, or somebody that they don't even know said it, and they're just repeating it. And they go on from childhood to adulthood saying the same thing, and they believe it, So
That's why it's important to have those conversations with your children. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that's coming out of this is people are, I've seen a lot of posts of, here are 12 or 15 books to read with your kids to develop anti-racist understandings with them, and that's good. We are talking about it, and I hope we're going to keep talking about it for a long time. That this is not just going to be a time that it flares up and dies down, that this is a sustained conversation that we're going to have and make some real progress.
It's uncomfortable to talk about sometimes, but
it's needed.
It's needed. Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate your having the conversation with me, because I think that this has been even richer than I dared to think it would be. And I think that it will generate some conversation with folks within our church and maybe beyond. So I really appreciate your willingness to put yourself in this perhaps uncomfortable place to help all of us take another step. So
thank you for considering us as well. I mean,
yes, thank you.
We love to help. We love to help, but we need this now. We all need it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording here.